Okay. So I think that if you want to talk to the team here also, that's good. So
So it's just like, so I already discussed this once a couple of months ago, like not couple of months, I think maybe like 6 months or 1 year ago. But now Clayton has a different, he has a different opinion. I think mostly to do because of the new feature which was merged to uh, for optimizing deletion of pods on the API server. Uh, Basically, logs should be available until the end of the as long as the pod is present in the Kube API server, right? So there are some changes which he had done, like where he wants for the logs to be present, he wants the sandbox pod sandbox to be present, which means you can't. The sandbox has to always be deleted in asynchronous fashion. It can't be deleted in a synchronous fashion, meaning the pod sandbox will always be stopped but not deleted. And once the pod is deleted from the API server, only then the pod sandbox will be removed from the CRI. Like, this is for the, I think to support, he was mentioning to support, I think, Docker, Docker shim, where it needs that sandbox to be present for the logs to be accessible to the user. If not, I think his point is when user is trying to delete the pod, there is some specific state, some short period of time where the pod is in terminating state, but user can't see the logs because the sandbox is getting deleted in the back. So, but the issue which I have is since Kubelet is talking to CRI and CRI is talking to CNI, it's in a two level, it's talking indirectly to the CNI. What's happening is as part of CRS stop pod sandbox call, if the container runtime is not able to delete the or stop the network, meaning it's not unable to deallocate the IP or whatever, like clean up that IP properly, the scenario happening is like now that pod is actually being removed from the Kubernetes API server, but CNI still has, or basically the network plugin on the host still has that IP lingering, and it has to like now clean up asynchronously using some external means, as it has to take some, as for reconciliation, it has to see it, okay, what is present in Kubernetes on this node and was it not present, and that kind of stuff to clean up instead of relying on the CNI calls. So what, like two things what happens, one, it has to now do this additional thing, but even there, like the one issue which I was facing is like there was other issue which I created like I think a year or two back, where currently only pod name and namespace are being passed as labels to this container network. But when I raised with the SIG network and all, they said like the right way is like you get the basic details like the sandbox ID, the namespace name, and pod name. And if you need anything extra, like you need to like, meaning if you need additional annotations or labels, you need to make the Kube API server call to get the details. Now, in this scenario, like I can't do that because the pod is already being deleted from the API server, but still the network is still lingering. Like another thing is like from the administrative point of view, what's happening is like he doesn't see any pod running on the host, but unless he creates a, unless there is some failure because of CNI thing happening on the pod, he wouldn't know that there is a leak happening unless there's an external monitoring which is present for the network. Because from administrator, he sees that okay, there's no pods running on this host, but all the IPs are all not usable because either they're not cleaned up properly or of that kind. So that was the issue like which I was facing, like we are facing internally, and at the time the solution was we can, similar to how we are waiting for C groups and storage and other things, other active resources to be cleaned up before we remove the pod from the API server. We thought like we can do the same for the network, like meaning like we can wait for the sandbox. Removal of sandbox will guarantee that pod is removed, network is removed, because right now there's no other way how the kubelet through its interface to the CRI can know that a network is actually cleaned up, except that sandbox is removed. But like I was talking to Clayton, so if both things are like against each other, meaning like in one feature we want sandbox to be removed before pod is cleaned up, in other thing we want sandbox to not be removed before pod is cleaned up from the API server. He was telling like, should we discuss something about a different way how like a stop sandbox is actually, or like we know that stop sandbox is actually taking care of that network cleanup. If not, there is some way, some status which the kubelet can know that, okay, all the resources are not, all the active resources are not cleaned up, so that we can wait at least the active resources are cleaned up before we can delete with the, go ahead and delete the API server. This is the reason is network is the only thing which are active resources which are indirectly being happened, because which Kubernetes is not tracking. If you see others like C groups or storage or what, or even the containers, right? We make sure that the container is the pod is stopped, which means all the containers which are not running, like, so there's nothing actively consumed on that host. Once this pod is stopped, I mean the pod sandbox is stopped, except that network.
Actually, it's not just it's only limited on the network. This is kind of things topic come and a couple times, right? So, so for example, in the past, we also have like the attached walnut have this issue, then we address that issue. So it's kind of like the node hold like walnut attached to that host, and we didn't claim, and we didn't detach, and so other remote node cannot reclaim. We also, even today, we still have some problem. I mean, I don't think it's problem, it's a cautious decision what we made it by SIG Node. So unless you actively hold that scarce resource or cluster resource, or it is on, or maybe node resource like the active running process hold, which is applied to the CPU and the memory, and also like the cluster resource like the walnut, and you hold that one, and you have to release. And so it looks like here it is network resource. We still have like, for example, and local storage, like even like a pod delete, right? So it's not all those kind of the disk usage is being cleaned up. I just want to say it's kind of lazy clean up. You cannot waiting for all the disk space reclaimed, and then you say, oh, and you can schedule, right? So schedule new stuff. You just cannot, even today. We basically doing something. So this is I think I can see that the debate where it came from. So my understanding it is, I think that sorry, I have to read the latest update from the comment made by the Clayton. But I think the Clayton didn't disagree about the release of the network related resource, right? He just want to figure out how to best we release. But it looks like the previous proposal, waiting for sandbox deletion, doesn't work because it's a whole workflow. There's some additional dependency.
Yeah, that's true. Like so he did not. He's not. Like there's no disagreement on the issue. It was more okay. Like since this new feature has come now, since both can't like go. Both solutions can't go together. So I was just like looking, okay, are we like, do you want to go like you were saying, right? Where, okay, like network deletion can happen asynchronously, and we have to take something similar to storage example, which you're giving, like where it's not, you can't wait for the pod, or should we go in a different direction? Like where can CRI like give some kind of a status of the network and just wait as part of stop sandbox? You can just wait for the network to be stopped, or that. Like I just like trying to see which direction we want to go. That way, like I can, if you go in the storage direction, right, then I can close the PR and update that. Okay, the direction which we go, and then look for a different how to solve the actual issue. So I was just looking for a direction, like if you can come in the direction, so I can just close the issue at PR and then follow that approach.
So my understanding is that I think there seems to be a problem in CRI definition today, because for container we have all kind of state like running, stopped, deleted. So there's different stages of the state, but for sandbox there's only ready and not ready.
Yes,
and
correct.
Actually in the containerd implementation, once you tear down the pods container, no matter whether you clean up the network or not, as long as the container is teared down, we will treat the sandbox as not ready. And for Kubernetes doesn't know whether we can delete the sandbox or not, whether sandbox fully tear down or not, because it's only not ready. It could be partially cleaned up, it could be fully cleaned up, but Kubernetes doesn't know that. So that's one issue. So to address that, we do need to change the CR a little bit to make sure that containerd or other container runtime can tell Kubernetes that, oh, everything's cleaned up. Now you can continue deleting the pod. So that's one thing. And another thing I want to point out is, I think Clayton mentioned in his commenting that even we have that, Kubernetes cannot guarantee that when you stop the pod sandbox, the pod is always there in the API server. So there are all kinds of corner cases that the pod is already gone from the API server, but Kubernetes still need to clean up the pod, sandbox and network. And I think just because of that, when we add the networking logic for Docker shim, we introduce the checkpoint, because we need to clean up the network without API server being a pod in the API server. So I feel like even we have that support, you need to handle this corner case in your network plugin implementation anyway, because I feel like I'm not sure what information you need from the pod in the API server. It feels to me like you're treating it as some actual state and checkpoint for you, but maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should just consider as a desired state, and if it's gone, it means that you need to clean it up. But what to clean up, you need to look at your actual state instead of looking at the API server to get that information.
That's exactly Anton, you brought up the checkpoint. I thought the checkpoint I did for CNI actually solves some of those similar risk condition issue here, because it's not all the state that goes to the API server. So we preserve at the node level. So that's why it kind of confused me, like the why still, because I read the original bug before today's meeting, why we need all those metadata states and in the API server still. Because initially we're doing this, we don't want to do the, in general, node level checkpoint back then, because pod spec keep changing, container spec changing, CNI spec also changing. So we don't want to do that, but we allow the CNI and a couple other components add the checkpoint, just to serve that purpose. So do we have ever thinking about that the using of the checkpoint to get of course there's the missing state, yeah.
I'm not sure of checkpoint. I can look into that. Like maybe I missed it. I can look it. I look into that. Like what the checkpoint.
Yeah. What information are you looking for from the pod today?
So, mostly like some labels. Like so, currently have a couple of annotations. So in last, I think an year or two back, I think not just from me, there are a couple of like requests from different, I think from multiple persons and teams. So they're looking for if we can extend CNI spec to, or like make more labels, or like or more annotations, or like, or maybe the whole pod spec itself be sent from kubelet to the CNI, because at that time it was mentioned that like you can put that metadata in the annotations, and then you can ask from the API server, the pod name and namespace, so you make a call to the API server and get the details of the pod, additional details, like okay, if you had to like do some subnet, like some features, additional features, right? Okay, if this pod requires an additional feature or not, like if you have to put those in, a kind of example. But there are other things which we use for which you put in that annotations, depending upon few annotations in the pod, the way the network is getting created differs on the host. I can point to that, like, let me try to get that issue, but it was mostly, there was a need for different CNA plugins where they need bit more metadata from API server to create the network into the network. And there was a proposal at the time to see if we can expand the spec to pass that more from upstream instead of just the namespace and pod name and ID.
I think the pod name and the container there's the information. That's exactly checkpoint. I remember it. But those annotation you ask for additional, maybe it's not there. And yeah. So obviously, like the container state and the runtime state, we didn't put there because right. So we are on purpose not to put there because that's a synchronization. Those on those write maybe cause more problem, like a multiple writer. So so that's. But I think they have like a lot of read-only state, just serve the purpose of what you are asking for here. But missing maybe application you want. So just want to let you know. And but I agree with you, Nantao. We also don't have the state to indicate like the current pod is terminated or stopped. Those signal we didn't issue those state. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for explanation. Like, yeah, I'll maybe like I'll close the story saying we can like we can treat this similar to the local storage where it has to be done in the background, not treat it as an active thing. Is that the right?
Yeah.
So is my conclusion right? Like from what I'm saying.
For the checkpoint, you can ask the Minghan, the freehand. Is that freehand? He's the LDAP. I mean not LDAP. He's GitHub account because he introduced the thing like checkpoint. Yeah. We have a lot of principles back then defined what kind of things can be checkpoint, and who should be writer, and what kind of things can be reader and consume that. And there's kind of principle we defined. Maybe this time we can document those principles and make sure, because if we want to have more dependency on this one, yeah.
Yep, sure. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
So do you have the consent, Monu, and also Mike on those things?
No concern. I agree with Lantao.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thanks. And the next one, I think, is the menu. Do you want to talk about the?
Yeah, I can talk about it a bit. So this is like one of my first issues that I'm looking at, so I'll need some help. Essentially, like I have been able to send PRs and people have been able to review it. However, when I was going through the code, a lot of the code goes to like different SIGs. I was wondering, how should I go about it? That is one. But other than that, yeah, that was one question that I had specifically. And then I also wanted to talk about like some of the comments that I made. I'll send the link. This one, is it like okay to ignore test files? And the other question that I had was like, does it make sense, since this issue has been open for like 2 years, does it make sense for us to put it on the next release? And I can make the code changes and address reviews as soon as possible, and make sure like it gets to a close regardless of where, because it's the complexity is not a lot. So these two.
I think you have two questions. One question it is this one's the change belong to maybe different because in the different file belong to the different SIG, right? So I think the one of there's the two. Normally, I think about there's two ways to handle this problem. Other people please chime in. And one it is you could create of the separate PR, like the small PR, and then target for each SIG nodes, each SIG groups, and find the owner for them. Another one is you just create of the big one, and but try on purpose to assign, find the reviewer and approval from different SIG, but that maybe take longer time if one SIG didn't respond quicker enough. So I would suggest like the smaller one and goes to each SIG. And also, second issue you just mentioned that this is like the 2 years old bug, but it is a high priority. We just need the help and from the community. If you really appreciate it if you wanted to help us to clean up our code base and driving this problem and make our code base is more secure. That would be wonderful. So from SIG Node, you can see that Alila and Sergey and the team do the recent try to make this is a high priority. So you don't need I don't think you need type for this one, but we can mark this is 1.23 release, part of the release, part of the enhancement. Okay. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering how it worked. It's confusing for me. Sorry. Yeah, because most of my PRs would now go to different SIGs. I'll just do smaller PRs and try and tag them. Thank you.
Any other comments on this one? People other maybe have the even better suggestion.
Not specific to this, but just hello, my name is Ray. I'm the 123 release lead. So I just want to I'll put in the chat the enhancements tracking sheet for 123 for this SIG to opt in any enhancements for 123.
Yes, we have one document because that document is keep evolve, and we have the last 2 weeks we reviewed all the caps for the 1.23 and try to identify the risk and also size and also all the current status and also try to find the review and approval. We are going to update. Yeah, thanks for this the link, and once we that settle down and we are going to update to your spreadsheet. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Yeah. So Manu, do you think about we answer all your questions here?
Yes, I think that's answered. Thank you so much.
Thanks. I will take notes and make sure this is also included in the 1.23. Yeah. Okay. So next one is the King store container. Do you need the host? Do you want to share and the presentation here?
I don't want to share anything specific. Okay. I was not in the last meeting, but this has been discussed in the last meeting as well. So I just wanted to share a general idea around the cap. So like everybody knows in the SIG node knows that we are struggling with the sidecar cap from long, and there have been lots of proposals on sidecar containers. So this cap is kind of similar to that, but we do not want to touch the startup and shutdown ordering as the sidecar caps, other sidecar caps were proposing. In this step, it is we are proposing a simple idea just to initiate pod termination on the status of your core application containers. So what happens if we try to use Kubernetes jobs with sidecar containers, then like for example, the logging containers or the service mesh containers, they will always be running, and the other main job container will be completed after some times, and the job status will never be completed. So to solve this particular job issue, we are proposing to first add an annotation in pod. That annotation will specify the number of will specify the names of the main containers or the core application containers, and we will use the restart policy and exit code from containers to determine if this pod is, we should terminate this pod. We'll do this in a reconcile loop. So in the cap, we have mentioned the exact code details. There is not much complexity there in code, and like, so I was just looking for the feedback from the community and like reviewers.
Sorry, and last week when we discussed Derek commit, he's going to take a look. So anyone, do you have the consent? But unfortunately today Derek is not here. So anyone else, have you reviewed that proposal?
I think Sergey also has taken a look, but he's not in the meeting.
So last time we discussed, because none of us reviewed and take a look, so we haven't committed this one for the 1.23. If you look at our the link below in the agenda, and we have long list of the proposals. So and so this one is still is the pending state. So I think that if I recall correctly, Derek said he is going to commit, he is going to take a look and come back together. So unfortunately today he is busy and he's not here. So so maybe we can talk offline, and we need to identify at this moment, I haven't looked at that yet. So we need to, if we want to, but there's nothing's blocked, this continue discussing and review. But if we want this is get into the 1.23, we need to identify reviewer and approver for this one. So far, I have to say that the volunteer committee.
Yeah, so that is getting a reviewer and approver is one thing. Another thing I am looking for is the, like, as a community, do we want to implement this, or like we want to go to the complicated proposals that have been in the past? So exactly, like I am looking for a direction. So like, is it the right direction to go?
Can I ask you, what's the complete process? If you talk about the complete process, your reference to the complete set container, yeah, maybe we could narrow down the scope. But if you think about the complete process, it goes through like the CAP process, review process, other things. I think, sorry, maybe for today, we have to go through those processes. So depend on what.
No. I'm not talking about the process here. I'm just talking about the complexity of the sidecar caps, like that have been proposed in past.
Yes, we do think about the sidecar container is too overcomplicated, and the problem, all the problem listed there, it is the problem, but a lot of our problem also have alternative way, and also we for all those kind of the solution being proposed there, we see the other problem, like the even more bigger risk. So this is why community, SIG Node community, especially as the maintainer, and for the overall healthiness and all those kind of things, we are kind of hesitated to take such big proposal sidecar container at that time back then. So we always try to attack a problem piece by piece. So we can continue if we can narrow down the scope on this one. But again, I have to say that I have to look at the kind of proposal yet. So I basically just say I like to see the problem, more concrete problem. We try to attack it, and more narrow down API surface, all those kind of things. I just want to share here. And as the high level, Manu, please go ahead.
So one thing is we have lowered down the scope, and also we are not making any API changes. We were first trying it with using an annotation.
So we even have like also some other things like the lower down. We need to take a look of the proposal.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. Manu and Seth, have any one of you look at the latest proposal yet? Do you want to have some like earlier feedback or level comment? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'll try to make a pass by tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, Milan.
Yeah, thanks. So maybe we can dedicate some time to review this one sometimes, and but not today. Looks like a lot of people is not here. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aditi. So next one, I think is just for your information, I guess. Promoting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. So I understand we did this review last time, but so long story short, we ran we did a pass to the issues we are aware of. And I believe actually that this cap, which is about the new pod resources API, could be promoted to beta, provided those fixes will be are addressed and merged. So yes, it's for your information about those fixes, which could use some review or in some cases approval, because a couple of them looks good to me. So some approval and some review could be helpful. And if we are still the capacity, if we are still on time, I will just ask you to add this promotion to beta. We already have end-to-end tests, so I think it should not be too much work. So I'm asking if we still have time capacity to do that. I would like to propose this promotion to beta. Yeah, and that's it. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So if not, is there any objection on this one?
Yeah, this is Markus Lehtonen from Intel. I was just looking at these fixes, and I was just kind of also wondering the general process of kind of doing the kind of API changes, because I saw that one of these fixes changes the API, and the kind of cap is not in sync with the kind of API that is really implemented in the source code. So I was wondering, like, should the cap be in line with that, and in more general terms, what should be the process of kind of making this sort of last minute API changes?
You just need to update your cap and request of the API review, and the update add the end test, and it goes through the normal process. And the API review, because this is required of some of the API changes, so API review may take the longer time, but I think we are okay, because this release have the longer release cycle. If we plan better and collaborate better, I think it should be okay, right? How other people thinking here? I don't have too much concern on this one.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, and I can help with the review and stuff like this. So I don't have any problems with it.
Sure, thanks. Another thing is I also just want to call out I think that because the original author is not here, so but he did reach out to me and about promote informal container debug pod and to the beta. This one don't have API change, so mostly it's just like the look at add more tests. And actually, they already have some tests already there, but they want to add more tests and then promote the beta. So I want to put here and call out if you have any concern or you want to play with it and before it's promoted beta, and please just do so. So otherwise, we try to include this into the 1.23 also list. Hey.
I was working on the PR to there is an API change for informal containers. There we add the ability to remove existing informal containers if they are existed, and the API change leaded its concerns if this is valid.
Good. Thanks. Thanks for heads up on this one. So anyway, if the API change, then also goes through the API reviewer, and it may take much longer time, but we still have to go through the process. And yeah, thanks for this. Yeah. Any other thing? Do we have any other topic people want to call out at before we finish today's meeting? Mark, I saw you just joined. Is there any topic you want to mention related to Windows container?
Oh no, sorry. I was just kind of in another meeting. I wanted to just catch up here. Is there anything that was discussed earlier about Windows?
Not today. Yeah, not today. So
okay.
Looks like we finished all the topic, and we have some like action item to do. One, it is came from the SIG release, and Ray just asked us to synchronize all the 1.23 release opt-in feature. So based on our document and menu quit, and we are going to work on that one. And then there's another thing is we need to sync up with Clayton about the the pod is removed before the API. That's the non-due bug, non-due issue, and the release of the CNI resource, hold resource on the node. So we have some new proposal. We need to sync up with Clayton and also sync up with the original also about the checkpoint, CNI checkpoint on the node, and say is it feasible to address that problem. And then there's another action item is basically is just come back to talk about the Keystone container and review. And also there's the two more tab is being mentioned that we want to include in the 1.23. We need to identify the reviewer and approver. I think both already have the reviewer and approver. And also both have the API, related API change, and have to go through API review. I think that's all for today.
Actually, I do have something that might be interesting for this audience.
Sure, go ahead.
So one of the KEPs that we've listed before for Windows was being able to identify Windows pods at API admission time, and that KEP has been kind of been discussed a lot in SIG Windows and with some of the SIG auth folks, and that's mainly so that pod security admission, the replacement for pod security policy, can act on pods that have and enforce OS specific security like constraints. The interesting the bits that might be relevant to this audience is we were working with Derek to figure out the best, like kind of a canonical way of identifying the Windows OS Windows containers or pods, and I think we've kind of reached a conclusion or a consensus across members of SIG Windows, at least with Derek from SIG Node, Jordan Leggett, and David Eads, and a number of other folks, to finally go ahead and add an OS field to the pod spec. So there's I can link to the KEP where that's being discussed. We had another meeting that Ravi from Red Hat set up yesterday, and unfortunately that wasn't recorded. But most of the notes are, most of the discussions from there are being captured to this. So Derek seems on board. Derek was actually pushing for this, but definitely probably needs a lot of thought from or considerations from SIG Node.
I think if you can convince the SIG-auth and the Derek to add the OS distro information there, because there's the strongest pushback initially, right? So if you add that one, I think from the community, I cannot represent the whole community, but I think that's in the past that we try to add OS distro information, related information, and they are the strongest pushback with concern.
They're all on board now. At least Jordan and David Eads are, and they were some of the main authors around the pod security mission and figuring out how to identify Windows and Linux.
Okay, so then it should be okay. I do see the people abuse such information in the past. And because if I remember when we first had the cube, actually I did add the OS distro information there. But I do say the people abuse that information. And but because today we do support Windows and the Linux both, so I think that's not abusive use, right? So because it used to be like the people even ask for more like OS kernel version there, and they want. I don't think about that's kind of like the abusive use, and to me, so I personally don't have concern on that one. So I think if they agree, we are basically, at least in the past, they are the strongest, against that one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll drop the KEP where all the discussions are being tracked into the meeting notes here. There was a lot of discussions around should this be defaulted, and the answer is no. And also some of the other conversations around like, do we have any extra information, like you mentioned, like the specific kernel versions, and the kind of consensus was that no, those would still need to be specified by labels, either built-in labels or people can add labels to them on them by themselves. And the main reason for adding this at this point in time is so that pod security admission and other admission controllers can just decide if they want to enforce Linux or Windows specific kind of policies. And anything more detailed that would depend on, specific functionality that it can differ across versions would need to be handled kind of in different places.
Sure. So can you do me a favor? Can you add this summaries, whatever discussed, and into our meeting notes?
Yes, I can do that.
We discuss here and what it is being. So people, because not all the people can attend this meeting, right? So people can review that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'll probably do that later this afternoon. I've got more meetings following this, but.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
So, okay. Any other topic people want to call out right now? Seth, I joined.
Sorry, am I audible?
Go ahead.
Yep.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Okay. Okay. So sorry about that. I was trying to speak during the ephemeral container discussion, but for some reason I wasn't able to. The mic wasn't working. But anyway, just a quick heads up. There might be a small update to the KEP to add another piece of information. So currently the KEP states that the way to identify that a pod has created an ephemeral container is through the addition of an annotation, but that hasn't been implemented yet, and that was like we were hoping to like try and implement it as part of beta. So like just as like a small heads up, there might be like a small addition, like detailing out the finer details of that onto the KEP during 1.23 release.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for heads up, and thank you for play with ephemeral container and also testing those things that add a new feature. So it looks like the people start play with this one. A lot of feature, basically people waiting for the beta and then start to play and enhance. Thanks for that. Yeah. Seth, earlier I saw you want to say something. Sorry,
No, I've been in the meeting. I just accidentally turned on my video for a second, but I don't have anything. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, sorry. So that's all for today, I believe. And
hey, sorry, I had a quick call out. This is
Sure.
Deep. So a few weeks back, I presented a few slides around this topic called runtime assisted mounting around Kata, and there were some open questions. So I have submitted a work in progress PR KEP. So SIG storage is Michelle and Saad were taking a look at it. They had some initial comments, and then it's in a GitHub PR form. So just a heads up that it's there, and it's 2857. I can also write it in the notes.
Yes, I remember you came here. Yeah. Thanks.
Any feedback would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Deep. Okay, that's all for today. And thank you everyone for attending today's meeting. And looking forward to meeting you next week. Thanks, back.
Bye, folks.
Thank you. Bye.